The Cuyahoga County Council Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, October 18th will please come to order. This is the second of our budget hearings. The clerk will please call the roll.
Good afternoon. It is 1:03 p.m. As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Mr. Tuma. Mr. Tuma is absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Schran.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Present.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens is absent at the moment. Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon's absent at the moment. Ms. Baker. I know Ms. Baker is here. She should be here shortly. Okay. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Council President Jones.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much, and I would like to call for a moment of silence in honor of Colin Powell, who was truly a trailblazer in leadership for our country. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone signed in for public comment?
Yes, we do. Lou? I would also like the record to reflect that Councilmember Baker and Councilmember Tuma are in attendance.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad that now we get into the main course. We will hear all the odds and ends, ins and outs, but please let me remind all of you, some of the things we have been lacking before because maybe certain information were not widely known. So, for example, I just mentioned in the previous couple meetings that shelters, for example, the infrastructures are completely wrong for the purpose of helping people to stay safe and healthy. So if you have to stay in the building, no air ventilation, but actually we are facing contagious viruses spreading around us. Think about how good that is. And also, the rooms you stay in, which was made as office. So the beds installed, they actually give you no distance at all when you have to pass other people. Try 6-inch. This will be the same issue for other traditionally heavily congregated facilities, just like our county jail, just like our nursing homes, just like our drug treatment inpatient services. So I hope from now on, our budget will reflect these basic human needs for public safety and public health, instead of just keep doing under budgeting. This is not healthy and dangerous. This is the reason why today we all have to face lots of difficult decisions, because county, we cannot print our own money, and not enough monopoly money to go around either. So we need your help to choose wisely and prioritize things wisely, so all the county residents can really receive the service they need and they deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next item on the agenda is the one matter referred to the committee, which is Resolution 2021-0238, the biennial budget resolution. I would ask that the resolution be read into the record.
Resolution 2021-0238, adopting the 2022-2023 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program. And it's for the Department of Health and Human Services, and it'll be a brief overview from David Merriman.
Good afternoon to the chair as well as to you, County Council. My name is David Merriman. I'm the Director of Health and Human Services, and I'm here today to present the Health and Human Service budget. Are the slides? Oh, there we go. The Department of Health and Human Services serves hundreds of thousands of residents each year and thousands of residents each and every day. We serve residents from pre-birth and their families to after their death. So we are literally providing services that are beyond cradle to grave. We do this with 2,300 staff. They do the work that makes our community safe and increases the welfare that exists in Cuyahoga County. Presented here, our overall structure. We tend to use quite a few acronyms, so I've included them in this slide for your reference, as well as the director of each of the departments. You heard from Director Tracy Mason in the Division of Senior and Adult Services on Thursday. Today you will hear from myself, Cindy Weiskettle, Kevin Gowan, and Tiffany Dobbins-Brazelton. The community initiatives will present on Thursday. I have summarized our budget here. Each department will present their own budgets during their individual hearings. The Department of Health and Human Services also includes the Department of the Director. I do want to take a minute to recognize Dr. Leon Harris, the Assistant Director of Health and Human Services, and Kathy Starks, our Fiscal Officer. Leon and Kathy help me as well as the other directors that are presented here. Much of the work that we do is done through a shared service structure in which our services are charged back from the Department of IT, Human Resources, Public Works, Public Safety. Although DHHS has 2,300 staff, the number of people in our building and the number of people that provide our services is much higher. I do want to acknowledge Public Safety and Public Works because they keep our building safe and clean, and they do an outstanding job. I'd like to talk a little bit about our budget. First, I do want to recognize that as Director Walter Parfiowicz presented on Thursday, our budget does not include any open positions effective January 1st, but no FTEs were cut from our services. Otherwise, this budget largely models the budget of 2019. This budget does include the tuition reimbursement program that was recognized on Thursday. We believe this program will help us attract and retain employees. That program is being paid for out of cash balances. There were no other significant additions to our budget. I want to speak a few minutes about the issues and concerns that we are facing during this next biennial budget. First and foremost, we have to recognize COVID-19 and the management approach that we have taken to control the pandemic. First, there are no ARPA dollars included in this budget today. I understand that will be a separate process. We are managing COVID within our programs and services through our own resources at this time. We have used CARES funds pretty heavily. We are also partnering with aligned systems such as the City of Cleveland Department of Public Health and the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, as well as internal departments such as Department of Development, Ohio Means Jobs, and Emergency Management Agency. We are all searching for new funding and trying to increase our services. The second area I'd like to speak on is implementation and integration of race, equity, and inclusion programs. I do first need to acknowledge that Leon Harris and Sabrina Robert and the DHHS Steering Committee have led this work from the onset, and they're doing an outstanding job. That group works closely with Lenora Lockett in her new role in the Department of Equity and Inclusion, as well as the Equity Commission and the Citizens Advisory Council. The last area that I want to speak to is strengthening our shared service and interoperability efforts. Our goal is to enhance our services and improve overall process by integrating services where possible and leveraging administrative resources. We have been using a shared service model for a number of years. It has helped us to address both budget shortfalls as well as opportunities to leverage state systems. And we feel like it is a strategy that should grow in the coming years. And our hope is that we will be able to further utilize staff more collaboratively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director, and I will now open the floor to questions from my colleagues. Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to Administrator Merriman, when you talk about using the shared model, give me an example of how you're planning on leveraging it even more.
Okay. To the councilman through the chair, I think two great examples actually I'd like to present. First is the Department of Contract Administration and Performance, or DCAP. As many of you have come to work with Paul Porter, DCAP is a shared service where we have consolidated the contract administration and monitoring staff from each of the large 4 divisions, and increasingly we'll be looking to utilize that model with the community initiatives. The reason we felt this was necessary is developing RFPs, launching services, managing contractors has become a very technical area of work. There are a lot of policy implications. The systems that are used for that work tend to be somewhat specialized and have quite a few responsibilities within them. And we believe it best for us to consolidate all of that work into a single department. There's a natural cycle for many services, and generally you don't have all RFPs launching at the same time. So by utilizing DCAP as a shared service, we can provide their expertise to each of the departments during different procurement times. In that way, DCFS doesn't have to have a contracting office. In that way, JFS doesn't have a contracting office. They can all use a shared contracting office. And then we can actually begin to bill the federal government for those services, because it's a shared service reimbursement is a higher reimbursement level than some of the other federal grants that we're on. Similarly, we have a fiscal office led by Kathy Starks, and Kathy's team has the fiscal staff that manage most of the fiscal responsibilities for the department. And one of the reasons that that's very helpful for us is that as staff leaves, Kathy has the ability to temporarily assign current staff to a project area so that there's no loss of capacity. In this way, we can keep our business going and at the same time be developing staff for new professional opportunities. And as I also said, it does actually present a preferential reimbursement rate.
So what does that, through the chair, what does that department look like?
So overall, the Department of the Department of the Director has 72 staff. That includes each of the I can go back. I can, if I may.
So you're talking about in your DCAP?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Each department has, I'll go back, has their own staff.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So listed up here, I could ask Kathy to share what the fiscal office is, but fiscal office has 20 to 30 staff. DCAP has around 15 staff. Communications, I think, has 5 to 10 staff. And each of them are assigned to that department, but can be used with other departments when necessary.
Okay, and what is the percentage level of the reimbursement? You talked about it a bit. For the shared service model, it'd be a higher percentage of reimbursement. What is that from the?
So to the councilwoman through the chair, so by hire, I can say that 4E is, I believe, less than 40%. I believe we can charge shared service to around 50%. I'm going to check in on that figure. Okay, I'm seeing Walter Parfiao, it's not his head. So it's around a 50% reimbursement for shared services.
Okay, I'm just trying to wrap my head around. I understand shared service model, but it looks like that you're not reducing any staff or any employees while doing it. So just trying to see where the benefits are. And we don't have to talk about it now. We can talk about it offline. But,
Okay.
just want to make sure in that new model that you're moving toward, or it's not really a new model, but, you know, expansion of the model, just make sure that communication is flowing with this office as well.
Of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and Councilwoman Brown is
Thank you,
next,
Mr. Chair. Thank you,
followed by Shran.
Director. So as we talk about the new shared services, you stopped short of Dr. Harris's staff. Can you express these customer care and performance? Are those?
Of course.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give a few examples, and we've been doing this shared service model since I believe 2017. So this is not, it is not new. So the customer care unit includes both the what used to be called the 7,000 line, or it's a customer service unit that can take calls from the public. They also have staff deployed to our buildings for walk-ins, where they have a sort of a cross-department customer service goal. They actually have the ability to escalate issues from trying to simply answer a question to wanting to get deeper into understanding why a case maybe isn't resolving the way that a resident would like. Customer care also includes our investigations unit. So those are the staff that when there's a incident of reported fraud, public assistance fraud, they go out and they do the investigations. They do hearings, and then they also have some additional functions. The next group that's on this list, performance.
How many people did you say were part of customer care?
I can get the full number for you. I believe it's closer to 60.
Okay, next.
So I'll get you the full number. So the next is Performance Evaluation and Innovation, or PEI. Leon came, or Dr. Harris came from being the director of that, and that position is vacant at this time, so Leon continues to lead it in addition to his responsibilities as assistant director. So that unit includes staff that are still deployed into departments and do a range of activities from quality assurance and data mining and assessment. They also do surveys and do report generation. I can get numbers for each of these if that's going to be part of your question. HHS Learning and Professional Development is led by Brenda Payne. Brenda is previously the director of our Northeastern Ohio Regional Training Center. Like contract administration performance, we brought the training groups together from child support, children's services, and JFS. We deployed them to the West Shore Center. And in this way, as we bring in training classes, we can have larger classes because we have more trainers. We can actually do cross training of our trainers as well. So if someone can develop more than one training set and training expertise, and a staff person goes out, you have somebody else there to cover. So Brenda's team, again, deployed at West Shore with the Personnel Review Commission. They're co-located, operates that training center. They train new employees, as well as train foster parents, and then help coordinate child care licensure. Those child care licensure families go to that training center for training as well. We have a staff that is actually part of the customer care unit that supports that work, but they work closely with Brenda's team. The last two groups that are listed here, so the HHS records, this is, again, a group of employees that still manage physical paper records, largely for the Division of Children and Family Services. For the most part, Job and Family Services and Child Support either have on-site records or they have eliminated paper records. They're into electronic records. But this group continues to help with the scanning, processing, and responding to public records requests. The last position listed here is the Voting Rights Coordinator. Currently, Simeon Best serves in that role, but he is also acting as the temporary director of the Office of Reentry. And so most of his focus has been on the Office of Reentry. This is, in essence, an office of one, but they've played a critical role in the past to help ensure that there is access to voting.
If I may, the training team, I believe we had allowed one of our staff to serve in that capacity as well. Ms. Ross, is that the same responsibilities that she once held? I'm just curious, and if so, you can get back to me on that.
Okay.
And then with absent Crystal Bryant, Simeon has taken on her role. Is that what I'm to understand?
To the councilman through the chair, yes. Simeon Best has been serving as the acting director of Reentry.
And is that a temporary or interim? How are we defining that?
We're in the final stages of negotiation. We should actually have an announcement out this week on the permanent selection for the director moving forward.
Okay. And then you mentioned Dr. Harris once more as it relates to the race and equity inclusion component. Is he also serving in that capacity as well as serving?
So yes, he and Sabrina Roberts lead the DHHS steering committee that has been charged with reviewing policies and procedures and really developing a culture that normalizes REI conversation and pushes our values to be much more responsive to the county's goals that we adopt just a clear focus on reducing disparity where possible.
Okay. And as you talk about reducing disparity when possible, I guess the thing that I would like to call to your attention is just how we are compensating the leadership in these roles. And so if you could also provide me with the org chart and the salary for the individuals that were listed today, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm noting that Councilwoman Simon is in attendance, and I'm going to call upon Councilman Strawn, followed by Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week, the county executive also spoke about this new program for educational reimbursement that you brought up. And assuming that a program doesn't get launched like this without the expectation it's going to run for, say, 10 years. So that's $25 million you're asking this council to basically support over the next 10 years. Is that a rough back of the envelope number? I'm just using your number, multiplying times 10 and getting to that number. Is that?
To the councilman, to the chair, I believe our portion is around $1 million. So that's what is going to be added to our budget, and I think for the biennial budget, it's a $2 million commitment.
Oh, okay, that's okay. It's biennial. Okay, so it's
Yes.
so it's all right. $5.5 million someplace in that area with reasonable inflation. Then over that length of time, over 5 years, and $10 million over 10 years. So, okay, so you're asking about a $10 million plus for a 10-year project. So one of the comments was that this was going to be a market-driven type program. So, but the county executive did not have many answers. I don't know if you heard on the market-driven aspects of it. If somebody wants to take a class unrelated to anything that they're doing here, for example, they want to be a school teacher, are we going to fund that?
To the councilman through the chair, I don't think we've made a decision on which programs will be funded or how staff will reflect on or request access to those programs. I do also want to confirm that, to my knowledge, it's $1 million a year for DHHS. So I understand you had maybe an overall figure for the county. For us, it's just $2 million.
$2 million for the biennial budget?
For the biennial budget for DHHS.
Okay. All right. Then, so if we don't know what we're going to fund, at least that's what I just thought I heard, is there going to be an application process that somebody can go into and then apply for, I want to be a school teacher, and yet they're working in a completely unrelated part of the county?
To the councilman through the chair, I have not seen what the application process will look like.
Okay.
I do understand that there will have to be a way in which employees can request to participate.
Okay. Even though it might be unrelated to any county benefit?
I haven't seen that. I don't want to speculate on that point.
Okay, please come back with the facts. Those are all, when you say market-driven, those are market-driven requirements that others do when they fund. And I know you don't want to get too far off of the typical nomenclature, which is we don't want to fund underwater basket weaving when that's probably not something we're gonna do a lot, but yet it could be an application. So next question is then. It sounds like you're probably not ready to speak on any of these points. And academic achievement, is there a certain number of a grade point that is expected before we're going to fund the education?
Yeah, again, I haven't seen how that program has been structured. My understanding is they're still working through the contracts. I don't think I can comment on it at this time.
Okay, and you won't be able to comment on whether or not they failed to do that, whether or not we're going to do any kind of repercussions in regards to that. Is there a length of time that you anticipate that somebody should be staying here if we're going to invest in somebody? The quid pro quo would usually be, again, market-driven, would be there an expectation of the person staying. Do you have that response?
To the councilman, to the chair, no, I don't.
Are we going to have all
that
these
information.
responses before we were asked to vote on this expenditure money?
This is the budget. We've proposed this. This is an RFP that was launched. We have proposals. I believe they're reviewing both the contracts at this time, and those details will be worked out in the contract, and certainly need to be in place before we can move forward with the program. So I do believe there will be a time in which the county will be bringing forward those programs to council if there's a contract, and I believe all those questions should be able to be answered at the time.
But it'll be after we've already approved the budget for this.
At this point, we're simply proposing the inclusion of the dollars in anticipation that the contracts will come forward.
Okay, all right. No, it's not exactly what I expected. I thought we would get somebody up here that would be able to speak to market-driven responses in regards to this, because then, of course, then the question comes down whether it's going to be funded upfront or whether it's going to be reimbursed upon achievement of a goal. You probably aren't going to be able to speak to that either, it sounds like.
I believe those decisions are still being worked out.
Okay.
So I would like to ask staff to also direct all these questions to Director Drucker in HR and ask that when he comes before our committee that he be prepared to discuss these questions and hopefully answer all of the councilman's questions. Councilwoman Baker is next.
Thank you, and I too would like to have those answers, so thank you, Chair, for requesting it. All right, if I may, how many vacancies do you have that stayed with the budget that you have not filled yet?
To the councilman through the chair, are you, just want to be clear, are you asking how many vacancies we have right now, or if there's a specific time frame that you're looking for?
Well, I know it's important that we fill many of the positions, and those that the executive felt were not vacancies that had been filled in the past, not recent vacancies, they were eliminated. So how many vacancies overall in your department are we still looking for?
So to the councilman through the chair, no vacancies were eliminated. My understanding is they were not funded. Positions weren't funded, but there were no eliminated positions.
Other than there's the budgeted that stuck, and then there's those that were not. So the vacancies that were budgeted that stayed, which I would think are a higher level need because they were perhaps more recently vacated, how many of those do you have in your department?
So
They have to ask that question.
Yeah.
Very specific.
yeah, and I want to provide an accurate number. So what I want to do is I just want to, at the time or right now, are you looking for how many vacancies right now or at the time that the budget was produced?
I guess we want current time, so right now.
So what I'd like to do is I'll come back with a number, giving you how many vacancies we have of right now.
Will you list those? I mean, are we talking 100 or 50 or 25 or 10 or 5? How big of a ask is this
I'll ask each of the departments to list how many vacancies they have at this time
at this time that are budgeted?
that are budgeted.
And then those that have not been budgeted, is there any concern there that they should have stayed budgeted? Or are you comfortable with them being maybe a second tier or a third tier of an ask?
To the councilwoman, to the chair, I don't have concerns. What we've said all along is that positions that are not budgeted come January 1st, there's nothing to stop us from moving forward. Departments can still request them. They go through the natural process. There is an HR process, and we do work closely with the PRC. And as that process does take some time, if it's an open position, you tend to accrue some savings from that process. And so we will be bringing forward positions that are not in the budget effective January 1st.
Okay, if I could see that list of maybe the more urgent vacancies that exist today that you have trouble or just have not filled.
Okay.
If I may ask, with the labor shortage that we're hearing, where do you find your weaknesses in hiring? Where is it that you're having difficulty?
Councilwoman through the chair, I think the labor shortage is a critical issue, and we have seen at the start of the summer just a challenge getting applicants in really across the board. As the summer went on, we actually have done much better. So there was a period where we had some fairly small child welfare classes. That is rebounding. It's not necessarily where we want it to be, but it's gotten better. For job and family services, some of the same. Not exactly pre-pandemic levels, but also within a range. Sometimes we do change positions, and so some part of what we're experiencing is asking for more from positions and asking for new candidates that we maybe don't have from the past, and so it's kind of hard to explain to someone, or it's hard to have a point of reference. So I would also acknowledge it is it's very competitive right now for administrative positions, especially budget positions, or fiscal positions, if you will. And those positions are, I think there's competition across all departments for them, and probably all government. And it's, I think it's a skill set right now that we all recognize is critical to us, and we're very aggressive at going after people that have that finance background or have the general administration skills.
Just to finish and wrap up, those that are in the weeds, that are there helping people that are out there, is there any concern at all that there is a lack of labor in order to help those that are getting firsthand help, the ones that sometimes see the most difficult cases and then ask for support to deal with that? Any concern that we should feel that you're not able to get the adequate amount of people on the ground?
To the councilman through the chair, so we're always concerned about burnout. We're always concerned about secondary trauma. We're concerned about the challenges of these jobs. These are very difficult jobs to begin with. This is pre-pandemic. This has been the case. The human service work is difficult. It requires residents to become employees and then go into their neighbors' homes at times.
Right.
Or talk to their people from their own community about their deepest, darkest secrets, their problems, the challenges they're experiencing. This is naturally taxing work. COVID has made it more difficult because I think all of us suffer with a certain amount of stress and anxiety as we look at what's gone on in our country. And I think at times we struggle with trust. And so, I do think it's worth all of us noting that there are open positions, and what we need are good candidates to come fill them. I don't miss an opportunity at a public speaking event, at a broad meeting. I broadcast these opportunities. I don't do it just for ourselves. I do it for the corrections officers. I don't think we can really take a parochial point of view anymore where we say, well, social worker 3s are my sole responsibility. Really, really important that we fill those positions, but it's also important that we fill corrections officers, that we get budget staff. I think we have to start to think more globally and just really, I think, trumpet the opportunities that exist within the county, because it is still a good place to work. And I do think we're running against, excuse me, some very, some changing labor force issues
Right.
that we're all still adjusting to.
Right, and just as a follow-up to that, and that's my question, are you in an alert level? Are you in a very higher level alert of, oh my gosh, we may not have the adequate people we need out there? I just want to know from you, is there a added weakness that we typically don't see? It's a tough job. We know it is. They're typically hard to fill. There's burnout, all of that. But as we stand today, with understanding how difficult it is to hire, and especially perhaps at this level, are we at a higher alert level than we typically would be where we need to be concerned?
So my concerns are both with getting the volume of residents to apply as well as the quality of residents to apply, because I don't think we can move forward with either. And so I'm concerned about both, because I don't think we're getting either the volume or the quality. And which is not to say that people joining our teams are not good. We are finding good candidates right now, but it's a changing workplace, and there are at times there is a lot of competition for social workers. There's a lot of competition for budget specialists. And so, we're very concerned about it, and we've prioritized it, and we are trying different strategies to bring in more employees, more candidates.
Okay, I guess, Chair, I would ask that if you're at a place where you just can't get what you need and it compromises the services that we're doing out there, to let us know.
Okay.
Maybe there's something, we can do to help you above and beyond what's in this budget. Thank you, Chair, for giving me the chance to ask.
Sure. Director, in your administrative office, in the budget book, the staff count for 2019 is listed as 73, and the staff count for 2021, 22, and 23 is listed as 58. Can you explain the difference in the 15 positions?
I'd ask my fiscal officer to come up just to make sure I'm responding accurately. I'm not sure if the 71, I actually had it counted as 72, included both the IT staff as well as the HR staff. I think those were presented separately in the budget book. And so in presenting the number as 72, and I count both the staff that are in the director's office, the staff that are in IT, and that are in HR. I hope that answers the question.
So are you saying that there's not really been any change in staffing? It's only been a change in the way it's presented?
I don't want to speak to whether or not this was presented differently in the past. I'd invite Walter or Director Parfialis if he wants to come forward and speak about a prior presentation. What I'm saying is right now, the number that I'm sharing, 72, represents all of the staff that are in the director's office, all of the staff that are in IT, and all of the staff that are in HR. And I include that as our entire FTE, to which I don't believe there's been a change. I think that's the same FTE count.
Okay, the
Director
director
Parfialis
is
is saying
nodding
yes.
yes. Okay. So in Children and Family Services, the staff count for 2019 and 2020 is listed as 847, but for 2021, 22, and 23, it's listed as 739, more than 100 less. Can you explain why that is?
Again, I'll look to Walter or Director Parfialis or Kathy Starks if they want to correct me if I'm inaccurate. I'm not sure that you're counting both of the budget areas that are included. My understanding is there's 881 staff that are included in both parts of the Children and Family Service budget. So I'm going to ask to see if our fiscal staff would correct me on that number.
Walter Parfialis from Budget Management. The numbers that are presented for 22 and 23 are the numbers for pay period 12 going forward. So those are the actual numbers, and those are the numbers that were budgeted on an ongoing basis into the next 2 years.
So it's significantly less than what was budgeted in 2019 and 2020, is that correct? Okay. My director, if you could stay here for a minute. The other question I had is that in this administrative office, and I've seen this elsewhere and I don't understand it. Take, for example, the 2022 executive recommended budget. All funds expenditure is $16,087,000. HHS levy fund is $4,912,000. Special revenue fund is $17,579,000, which totals $22.5 million. It seems like the all fund should be everything, and that this top number should be as higher or higher than the three sub-columns, and I'm wondering why that's not the case.
Can you tell me which department that was?
This is in Department of Health and Human Services Administration, the one that we're on right now. The same situation is visible in JFS as well.
Yep, I believe you're correct. The all fund should be total of everything, so that number would be off. Because in all funds includes state and federal reimbursements, the levy dollars, and any other special revenue that we would receive. That's correct. The all funds number there, I don't believe that that's correct. That's probably off. That should be higher.
Okay, so could you...
This document is not system generated. It's generated by one of our administrators in the OBM office, and that is an error.
Okay, could you get it corrected for at least at least for JFS and NHHS administration, I found
Miller,
it.
I have a new administrator that's been assigned to these areas, so his work needed to be reviewed, or his or her work needed to be reviewed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Ms. Baker.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stevenson, with the director from Senior Adult Services, asked for the adult vacancies that were there, and we have not received that yet. I wonder, at least to my knowledge, I haven't received anything yet. I wondered if you can get a follow-up. I know she's not here, but if that would be good to know, given the population of our senior services increasing.
I'll follow up, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Councilwoman Conwell and then Gallagher.
Through the chair to Administrator Merriman, me and you have had some conversations in the past about pay equity amongst the directors of the HHS departments. How is the pay range for each HHS director is determined?
To the Councilwoman through the chair, so most of the staff that are in position were placed into these positions prior to my time. My understanding is each of those processes, each of those selections and the hiring was followed the process that existed at that time. So some of our staff have been with us for, I'm trying to think who's been around the longest, for more than 10 years. And I understand that their salary was determined based upon HR consultation at that time. In terms of looking at equity moving forward, I think I'd have to direct that question to HR Director Jesse Drucker to talk about how equity is being assessed and what the plan is to move us forward.
And does the case advisory group play any role in the reports that they're issuing?
To the Councilwoman through the chair, I'm not aware of a role that they're playing in the HR process.
And can you have sent over to me a list of the salaries for each director at this time?
Councilwoman through the chair, yes, I think that's similar to what Councilman Brown asked. So we'll send that over.
Ms. Conwell, you're done, okay. Okay, Councilwoman Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what we're hearing is the vacant spots have been taken out.
Of the budget.
And if necessary, you'll go back through the regular process to hire for needs?
To the Councilman through the chair, yes. The funding for the vacant spots effective January 1st is not included in the budget, and the communication is if we don't have the resources that we need as we begin to fill those positions, to bring that request forward through the Office of Budget and Management to add those funds back to our budget.
Are you satisfied as we sit here today that you have the necessary personnel to do what you need to do, and that it would be reasonable to assume that any further requests to fill needs down the road would be extraordinary?
Councilman, I'd ask you to, so am I satisfied that we have the necessary staff?
Yes.
We want higher quality staff, we want more staff. I don't think there's any question that we do need, this is to the point that was raised by Councilwoman Baker, we need better quality applicants to come forward, and we do have vacancies that we want to fill. Now, I assume that will be the case effective January 1, and we will be presenting those as they come forward. If we need the budget to allocate those resources to hire those staff. It is tough work. We are always losing staff. There are always staff that are promoting, and we're always looking to refill the open positions. There has never been a time that I've worked with Bill Mason or Armin Budish where they've stopped me from hiring social worker 3s, eligibility specialists, board officers. They understand the value of those positions, and I think I've always gotten the support that I've needed.
It really wasn't my question. Was this your idea to take them out of your budget?
To the councilman through the chair, this is the budget was developed with without positions without funding for the positions that would be vacant January 1st. That's how all of the county's budget was developed.
Right. My question was this your idea?
Councilman, that is not, it's not my purview to develop the budget development strategy. That's something done by the fiscal office.
You're the director. You run the show. You're the boss of this. You present to us. I don't see anybody standing behind you from fiscal saying, yeah, it was his idea or my idea. So was it, and be clear, we're being recorded for posterity. Was this your idea?
To the councilman through the chair, this is our idea. This is the county's budget. We are presenting a county budget to you. And our input was solicited. We provided feedback. The county has brought forward a budget.
So it wasn't your idea?
It's our idea. This is our budget.
Well, I'm part of our, and it wasn't my idea, so it wasn't our idea.
Well, it was, I can tell you that there's a county budget for the Department of Health and Human Services.
And within that county budget is you're the director of this. It's a simple question. I guess you don't want to answer it. I think I know why. Because you were told, here's my suspicion, because you won't answer directly my question. You were told this is what your number is. You were told we're going to take these necessary jobs out right now with the understanding that we'll put them in later. That's not a budget process. That's not a budget process. That's not budgeted for what your needs are. So you were told these things. Unless I hear differently, that's what it was. And I know you don't want to answer it, and I don't want to put you in a box because we've heard now from other people pretty much the same way, that unfulfilled jobs have been taken out. There's a reason for that, and I'm trying to figure out the reason. I know I can guess the reason, but I need a director who runs the division to stand up in front of this council, in front of the people of Cuyahoga County, and tell us who's making these decisions. If it's the administration, that's one thing. Then we'll bring them in and we'll ask them directly.
To the councilman through the chair, I just would say again that the jobs have not been taken out of our budget. We don't
Yes,
have
they
the funding allocation.
They don't, once you take them out of the budget, they don't exist. You are saying that I'll come back if necessary, and you are saying the same thing. It is necessary, it's going to be necessary to come back before us and to reinstate those jobs. If you take them out of the budget, they don't exist, and then you're not budgeted properly. Ergo, you are under budgeting for a reason. I don't know why, but I'll leave it at that because I think I know where we're going. And warning to everybody else that comes before county council, I'm going to be asking the same thing if that's what's presented.
I would just like to remind my colleague, Councilman Gallagher, and all of my colleagues that the budget resolution that we have in front of us does not include any assigned staff numbers for any departments. It only has the amount of money for personnel and the amount of money for other expenditures for each department. So what we're saying is that that we're budgeting the amount of money that in the administration's best opinion is going to be sufficient to run the department for the year, and they're not precluding them from hiring any staff that they believe are needed.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. You have parroted what the director just said. I find that woefully unacceptable.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Baker.
if I may just add, maybe just for the record, for our knowledge, given this is a different budget process than what I'm used to seeing, you've mentioned a few times about blended positions, that some people are now doing different duties than what perhaps the post was to begin with, or what they're used to doing. Any concern at all for the vacancies that are there, that are funded, or the vacancies that are not funded, that when you ask to fill some of those vacancies, especially the ones that aren't funded, that you may be getting a little pushback of, can we make that maybe 2 positions into 1, or can we change the way that perhaps it used to be when it was funded, but now that it's not funded, we might expand upon that category differently? Any of those concerns come up in your thoughts when you have to come back with an unfunded request?
To the councilwoman through the chair, first I would want to correct the record. We don't blend funding. We do at times have shared services where we are able to charge positions to multiple grants or to a shared service pool of operations. And so I think that although I'm not a fiscal person, my understanding is that's the fiscal structure. I don't have the concern that as we've used this shared service model that we've had to make the difficult decision that a staff person might be asked to do more. I mean, that is a part of work. There are times that because work changes, you have staff, you ask them to do different tasks. There have been times we've asked staff to transfer between departments, and I think they can be difficult because they might be leaving a department they're well attached to. But at the end of the day, as the director, we have to look at our work and we have to look at the clients we serve and our processes, and we do have to make that decision at times. And so is it possible that a staff person could feel like, well, I don't know if I want to do that work, I could leave? That's possible. Staff people leave. Our job is our job, and we have to get the job done. And if that means we have to move someone or we have to ask them to do some additional work, that's what we're going to do.
If I may, I understand that. That's what your job is. I guess I'm leaning more towards the unfunded, that you would say, hey, to the executive, I need to have this person, I interviewed, looks good, he's going to do this specific job, and any pushback of, well, can you get that person to maybe fill 2 positions? Can you blend the job to read differently to save on what's not budgeted, and we will now have to find the funding to budget? That any of those concerns of the unbudgeted request that may evolve into a different job description?
To the councilwoman through the chair, I don't have those concerns. I would say first and foremost, the process that we follow has been established, and we utilize the process that has been approved by HR. We don't post a position until it's been approved and it's a clear posting and it's a clear role. And I think once you've got that posted, you go through a hiring and selection process, you bring back a candidate, you make them an offer, and they do the job that they've been hired to do. If at some point you realize that job has changed or there's an opportunity to add or take away from it, we engage HR to say, is this a change that can fit within that position? I don't think the decision to not include money in the budget at the start of the year will have an impact on that. I've not felt any pressure for us to be looking to change positions as a result of this budget. In fact, I would say at times that I've taken positions up through that process, I've gotten the support of the administration to actually upgrade a number of positions as the work has gotten more complicated, especially managing large federal grants, especially managing COVID planning. If anything, we see positions and we see that may be too low to do the work that now exists. And is there a way for us are the resources available for us to get a better candidate and get a better position hired? So, but I haven't felt any pressure whatsoever.
Well, we haven't done this before this way either. So this isn't, I'm sure you haven't to this point, but this is different. And I'm just asking, is that difference at all concerning that when you start asking now for unbudgeted positions to be filled, if that ask could be compromised by perhaps other ways of trying to save in order to hire that person? That's where my question was going. I'm not questioning, what you have done and what our employees are doing and what support you have been given. But given the difference between what we're asked to approve today and what you're used to, are you at all concerned? And it sounds like you're not.
I'm not.
Okay.
Okay, we have Council President Jones followed by Tuma.
So these budget cuts have been made across the spectrum, and it certainly is different. If I look at the correctional officers, there was an aspiration of a little over 700 correctional officers. Never reached that aspirational number. But we got up to maybe 600, 650 possibly, but we're on maybe 550 now. Okay, maybe 650 was the most at some point. So the budget has come down to 650. Okay, that's the budget. So it has been reduced from plus 700 down to 650. I have a concern more so with the correctional officers just because of the optics of it, knowing the challenges that we've had in the county jail. But that's been done across the board. I'm asking the question this way: do you have an aspirational number? And I'm going to ask specifically about social workers because we know the challenging work they have. Is there an aspirational number? Is there the level that you have reached? And I assume that's where the budget has been reduced to. Give us those numbers. What, just in plain conversation, what have been the aspirational numbers for social workers?
So to the council president, through the chair, I will let Cynthia Weisskettel, director of DCFS, answer the question about the aspirational, the technical, the detailed number that you're looking for. But what I would share with you is that Armin Budish asks me frequently, where are we with social worker 3 hires? Hire as many as you possibly can and fill your vacancies. I don't think there's any difference between his reflection on social worker 3s and what I heard him describe as he talked about the corrections officers. If he could hire more, he would. And that's what I heard on Thursday. He's presented for us. If you can hire and fill up every social worker position, that's what I want you to do. And that's the way that we're proceeding.
There have also been creative efforts to increase the number of correctional officers and their attendance in other areas. Are you doing something similar in the world of social workers?
Again, I think I'll ask Cynthia Weisskettel to reflect on this when it's her time, but I'm sorry, to the council president through the chair. So we are working with HR to model a lot of the strategies that the Department of Public Safety is using in terms of advertisements, in terms of ads on buses or other means, trying to find out how we can reach new pools of talent to be kind of exploring for these positions. So I do think we're trying to do things differently. Sometimes we're going back to strategies that may have worked in a different market, and sometimes we're looking around the country and seeing are there other ways for us to really to really find these candidates, because it is pretty hard. I hope I've answered your question. I'm not sure if that speaks entirely to what you're looking for.
Answer was Cindy's coming up next.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
Councilman Tuma.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Merriman. You know, my concern is, as echoed by Mr. Gallagher, is that if something isn't budgeted, it's, for all intents and purposes, it's assumed that the money isn't there. So if there are positions that you are in need of, it would seem to me prudent to have those positions budgeted for. And then if you don't use them, the money, you know, can be put back into the general fund. I just don't understand how it is, and it's not just your department, it's this budget across the board, how we can say that something is potentially going to be needed and yet we're not budgeting for it. And that's just a grave concern of myself, and I know Mr. Gallagher echoed that as well. I think last week, Councilwoman Simon asked for the budget to come back with other figures with the positions in there. So I know that was a newer request, but it would be my hope that as we move forward, we have some of that here, because I just don't feel comfortable going forward with this budget process the way this is going about. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but to me, a budget has specifics, and you know, this lacks them. And I'm not putting it on you. I understand you're working within the framework within which you were given, and so I don't want to put this on you, because I understand you have people that you have to answer to as well, but as part of our responsibility, I think, to the public, I would say that, you know, I think we need more specifics here as far as, especially a department like yours that's so important on so many levels. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Director, these staffing levels were based on pay period 12, which was in early June, which is more than 4 months ago. My question is, for your 4 major departments, are your current staffing levels the same as they were at pay period 12, or are they more or are they less?
Council Chair Miller, I did do a little bit of research this morning, so I'll just go over them very quickly. So I compared staffing levels according to the payroll registers. June 5th was pay 12. Last pay period was October 9th. Child support was 267 in June, and now they're at 254. So they actually dropped some staff. Children and Family Services in June was 776, and presently at 753. Senior Adult Services in June was 151, currently 147. Job and Family Services in June was 759, currently 752.
So I think budget-wise, we're not in bad shape. We would have to fill a number of vacancies just to get up to the numbers that we had back in June. What the administration's proposing is not complicated. It's simply based on the fact that particularly in this environment where hiring is difficult as it is, we're simply not going to hire all the positions that we would like to fill on January 1st and keep them filled through the whole year. And there's no reason that we should budget like that. If we budget like that, we either have to approve a budget that's woefully unbalanced, or else we have to cut programs and positions for no good reason, because we're probably not going to need the money anyway. So, for what it's worth, that's my opinion. Any other comments, Councilman Gallagher?
Director, I don't want you to get the wrong impression. This is the council that during the previous administration came to us once again, and I can only speak to that because we heard what was said behind the scenes. So I can't prove anything, but we were being told, directors were told to come in front of us, here's your number, stand by it, ride or die, and that's just the way it is. And we ran into a situation in this budget, your budget, you weren't director at that time. I don't even know if you were on board yet. And this council added, I believe it was 10 more spots for social workers, of which the administration never used. But we were so concerned that they were light on the number, we added those in just because. And just because we added in doesn't mean the administration has to follow suit and use those positions as we saw them as necessary. But I have this sneaking suspicion that here we go again. We have an administration that's telling directors, here's your number, stand by it, ride or die. And you just said, Mr. Budish just told you that hire who you need to hire, fill what you need to fill, and fill your vacancies. This budget takes those vacancies away. So you're standing before us today and telling us in the next 2 years that you're not going to need anybody else. That's what a budget is. This is what I need. This is what I want. This is what we need to do our job. And that's it. And I don't want mysteriously a wave. And we understand, especially at the jail, and I'm very sensitive about that, and I think everybody else is throughout the county about the jail. I think it's the perception is reality situation. Is we're at 550, we'd love to get to 720. In 2 years, do I think we're going to get to 720? Quite honestly, I don't think anybody believes that. But it sends the message to those COs that the 550, that we got your back. And it's not costing the county a nickel to put it in the budget. Not a nickel. Because if you don't fill them, it goes back to the general fund. All I see here is we're going to take those out of the budget. We're going to have a major surplus. And if necessary, we can always fall back, say we got the money in the bank because we have a surplus. Well, what you've actually done is misbudgeted, under-budgeted purposely for a reason I'm not too clear on. We're not over, we over budgeted allegedly with the 720, but there's a reason for that. And then as the jail is built, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, that 550 that we're at right now is going to be heavy. We know that. So we're going to save a ton of money there because we're not going to need 550 or 600 or 720. I just cannot believe that directors are coming in front of this body saying what they have is what they need. And oh, by the way, if we need something down the road, wink, wink, the money's sitting there, we know it, because it wasn't budgeted. Don't come back. Don't come back and ask for more. This is the time to ask for what you need. And actually, when we did the budget with the first administration, we figured out what was going on. So we held the directors in front of us feet to the fire. Are you saying this is what you need, draw the line? Because that's what budget is. So you're telling me, this committee, that this is what you need to fulfill your mission with what you have. So I'm going to take you at your word, and I expect I won't see an HR committee or at the Board of Control saying, oh, I need 10 more. Don't do that, because that makes what you're saying right now really sketchy. So I'll say what we said 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Is this what you need? Question.
Councilman, to the chair, through the chair, as Director Parfial has just presented, we have resources right now to keep hiring through the remainder of the year. Those resources will be available at the beginning of next year. And frankly, if conditions change and I need to come and ask for more resources, I will. I understand, I hear your perspective, I hear your question, but I can tell you that regardless, I will come forward and do what has to be done and ask for the resources I need.
So the answer, I assume, is I've got what I need.
Right now, we have the ability to hire. That ability will continue all the way through this year.
You'll
That
always have the
ability will
ability
continue
to
next
hire.
year.
You'll always have the ability to hire. You'll always have the ability to add on. You'll always have access to money that you need because of this council. You know that. You know that. I'll go back to the questions that I directly asked you, and you didn't answer. It makes me concerned.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on, to the director, this is a balanced budget, right, as you submitted to us?
Yes.
Accurate statement? And to my chairman that mentioned a woefully unbalanced budget, if these got restored, can you elaborate a little bit more on what's a woefully unbalanced budget? Is it something that we can pass, or is it something that we just have to deal with, and what impacts would that be?
Well, we have reserves to cover it. But the question is whether we want to pass a budget that's clearly unbalanced on an operating basis and send a signal about the sustainability of our operations that could be misinterpreted in the wider community.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Director, I always kind of butcher your name.
Parfial, it's fine.
I'm going to call you Director for now until I get it down pat. Would this impact our bond rating at all if we dip into the reserves that we have?
It could. I mean, whenever we're rated, before we go forward to do a bond issuance, those are the questions that the rating agencies ask us. They ask us about our operations, about our ending balances. Are we meeting our required reserve balances? It's all part of the equation.
Through the chair, we're in a very good position in regards to the consideration for our bonds because of the access that we have?
Currently, yes.
Has it always been that way through the chair, since you've been here?
Since I've been here, yes.
Good. So we're pretty good fiscal, prudent stewards of the county dollars. And through the chair, to my colleagues and to the director, is it fair to say if we restore the money to the, any changes to the budget that we make, it's council's responsibility to find the money within the budget or just use the reserves? We have to make that decision. So any cuts that we would make, we would have to do it ourselves and then submit it back to you in a past form, and you would have to do it that way.
Correct. I mean, the executive's recommended has been submitted, so this would be the opportunity for amendments potentially.
Yeah, so if for say, leaving the dollars in place for our reserves, if we put the dollar amount, what's the dollar amount that we're talking about
In
in
our-
regards to the positions?
Just last year, it was about $10 million that went unspent in personnel services.
So if we keep the reserves where they're at, we'd have to make $10 million worth of changes within the operating budget to have a balanced budget. Would that be accurate?
Let me just clarify, that's just on the general fund side is about $10 million.
So I'm just trying to have a full understanding of the options that are available to us as we continue this dialogue. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and directors, I appreciate your answers to my questions.
So Director, my question is whether under the conditions that you reasonably anticipate and is most likely, considering that you fill as many vacancies and as hire as many people as you're able to find, is there enough money to cover what's going to be your likely expenses? If yes, you can say this budget is adequate. If the answer is no, you should ask for more money now and not say, well, we'll wait and see if we need more money. You know, it's a matter of budgeting for what is the most likely and reasonable scenario of how much money is going to be required.
To the council chair, yes, this budget is adequate.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, if I may follow on that?
Yes.
Yes?
Mhm.
Didn't you just say a few minutes ago, though, this is going to get you through this year and next year, not for 2023? So are you good with this budget all the way to the end of this budget and not come back for additional resources unless there's something unusual that has happened, that either more is needed because the environment changed, or it would be an unusual circumstance? But right now, in this budget, you have enough for what you need, and you don't anticipate coming back unless there's an unusual circumstance that you would need to. Is that what we're hearing?
My answer to the chair was yes, this is adequate for the entirety of the budget.
Entirety of the budget?
And I think we live in on pretty much a pretty special time between COVID and all the other things that come back. I feel like I can come to this council and request if something changes. I feel this council's always heard me, hasn't always agreed with me, hasn't always given me what I've asked, but I never feel that I can't come forward and present something.
The vacancies that were vacancies that were not funded, not budgeted, you felt is good to drop off, that you probably never would have hired any of those people anyway, and that it was a logical line to draw that the administration has done, and you don't anticipate coming back to fill those positions specifically that were taken away.
I'm going to continue to support the explanation provided by Director Parfiowicz, as well as is presented by this council. The way that the budget was developed provides us adequate resources to fill our positions. If we need additional funds, we will come forward and ask for them.
Okay, that's a little different than eliminating positions and coming back and realizing that you need them. That's a little different. That's what you're saying is where they drew the line and said, we don't need these funded vacancies, is because they're not needed. And we can go 2 years and we don't need them. It's just adding to the budget unnecessarily, and what is in the budget for the next 2 years is enough for you to do your job, and only in an unusual circumstance that you may need more funding is why we might see you again.
Keep in mind that the staff numbers under this approach to budgeting are an average and not an upper limit, and it's anticipated that sometimes during the year the staffing number will be higher than the number that's listed here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just for clarity, when I use the term aspirational for correctional officers, I was characterizing it that way, but we know that was the actual budget, 700 plus for correctional officers. We just never reached it. That's what I guess I meant by aspiring to it. They never reached it, and they budgeted down to what was actually happening. So that is why I was asking the question in terms of what were you aspiring to. Your budget last time was what you were aspiring to, and now you've reduced it down to where you've actually in reality been able to hire. Again, I guess I say I've had concerns in certain departments. I've had concerns, and you've heard our concerns of our colleagues. It's something that this body will have to think about, and I'll leave it at that.
Councilman Gallagher.
You're making your money today, right? And I think the president hit it kind of on the head. We were told by Mr. Chambers that there were some divisions within the county that would over budget, possibly purposely, take that money at the end of the year and pass it out like trick-or-treat candy is in the form of bonuses. I know you don't, but I have to ask the question, do you do that?
To the councilman through the chair, no, we do not do bonuses.
Okay, I think that's why the line of questioning that you're getting is as maybe as rough as it is, because we want to get to find out if indeed that's happening, and so don't think you're getting picked on. We're going to be up here drilling everybody and praying that we get the same response that you just gave me.
Okay, I don't see any other hands, and it's time to move on to DCFS. Thank you very much, Mr. Director.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Cindy Weiskettle, the Director of Children and Family Services. We've been asked to present an overview of our budget.
And do you have a written presentation for us?
No, sir, I only have my notes.
Could you prepare the notes after the meeting and send it to us so that we have a written document?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So when we were asked, our budget for 2022 through 2023 is the same base budget I was given in 2019. Plans for the next 2 years is that the funding would stay flat. The question was asked, would we have to eliminate any services that are in place at this time or initiatives? And the answer is no. New initiatives, we did not propose any new initiatives with this budget, so we did not have a decision item that was not funded. I think the biggest thing to talk about with DCFS is that board and care is one of our greatest expenses. We have seen in the last year, this time last year, we had about 245 more children in custody than we do now. So although board and care costs are high and placement of children is expensive, with less children in custody, we believe we will live within the board and care dollars that we have been given. As far as vacancies are concerned, we have hired 84 frontline workers this year, but have lost 69. So one of the problems that we have at DCFS is not hiring strictly, it is retention. The retention issue remains a huge issue. We currently have 67 vacancies. So this year, we've made an addition of 15 staff. After hiring 84 people, we only are ahead by 15. Our staff, I know I'm biased, are probably the hardest working staff that work for the county. Their job is pretty difficult. The pandemic has only made that job more difficult. Staff struggle immensely with the idea of getting sick, with going into people's houses, not knowing people's vaccinations, things of that nature. I think it is contributing to our vacancy. I do not think it is the reason for our vacancy. Child welfare is a job that people take as a job most people take right out of college. It is a starter job for many. When I look at my vacancies over the last several years, at any given time, I've had a fair number of vacancies. And so we have never hit the budgeted amount of vacancies because we keep seeing the lack of retention. I don't know if there are questions.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
sure, I'm waiting.
Okay, so Did I see the council president? We're going to start there.
So I get that. Over 10 years, I've seen that you hire at a rate because people leave, and you said you have raised the level about 15. Remind me of the number again. What was in your budget for social workers?
Our prior number was 520, and we're short 67 positions.
520, and it is now 520 in this budget as well, or has the budget been reduced? We were told across.
I believe
the
we're
board.
down to, my vacancies have been removed from the budget.
How
So I'm
many-
at about 453 if my math is correct.
520 was budgeted last time, and now your budget has been reduced to 420,
53,
453.
correct.
453 is the most you have reached, and, I'm sorry, now where are you now? You've added 15, but where are you overall?
So as of September, my last number I have for you is that at September 14th, I was short 67. I had 67 vacancies. So probably today, it has gone up a little bit. We also have another training class in, so we normally hire 5 classes a year. We are hiring 8 classes of social workers this year. There is a class in process now, Class 7, and we will hire another class before the end of the year.
As of today, do you have 300, 400, 500 social workers? What is the actual number as of today?
I believe my actual number is 453.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we have Ms. Brown, Ms. Conwell, followed by Brown.
All right, thank you. Through the chair to the director, total number of employees in your department?
I'm so sorry, I was so focused on my worker number, I'd have to get the number for you. I apologize.
And does your department give any bonuses given to your department?
We do not.
Any retention discussions taking place? And
We've had several discussions with HR about retention. I think there are several things, I think that staff, like I said, struggle with the pandemic. They struggle with wanting more flexibility in their work. I think the families and children we are serving are incredibly difficult to serve at times, and that causes staff to burn out or have trauma and seek other employment. Yes. With my help from my fiscal person, I'm at 753 total employees as of October 9th.
Okay, so the majority, or almost half, or the majority is social workers.
My frontline staff are the biggest population of my staff, yes.
When you talk about retention discussions, any terms of looking at, I'm kind of thinking that the professional services, is that something a tool that you're going to utilize for retaining?
I'm not sure I understand the question, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're being asked to put in additional money for
For education.
for education.
Yes, I definitely think allowing my staff to pursue licensure or to pursue advanced degrees would be helpful to their personal growth as well as the growth of the agency. With an agency that has so much very young staff at the front end of the system with not a lot of experience, additional education could be hugely helpful to ensuring that their ability to do the job is the best it can be.
Now, on that additional education, I'm a proponent for that, but I'm also a proponent when we offer those things, do we have a term of how long they should continue to remain as a staff after they've been given this educational movement up?
I believe that the way retention will improve at DCFS is by offering education and then asking a certain amount of time, because then what you will see is the length of service of staff getting greater, which will improve the quality and the performance and the experience of staff as they work with families.
And we've talked about that in the past, but has it been determined how long that would be?
That has not been shared with me.
So that would be more, from your opinion, would be more in the discussion of, as we talk about professional services and education.
Yes.
So we have to keep a focus on that. And I just want to have one more comment. My concern of removing the number of dollars from your budget is because we can't control the number of children that are going to come in our care. So
It's absolutely true. The number of kids coming into care will vary a bit. That's very true in our history. Like I said, we're down about 245. Not that long ago, we were up at 3,000 kids. Right now, we're at 25, sorry, I have it. We are at currently, as of today, at 2586 kids in care.
So that goes to why I'm in disagreement of taking, maybe across the county, we can look at specific budgets of why we should allow that money be in there to determine, if we need to hire staff, because we don't know, and we can't manage having caseloads go up.
Correct. I will say we continue to work on placing children with kin. About a third of my children are placed in kinship care. In child welfare, the best placement for a child, if they are not in their parents' home, is with kin. It is considered the best outcome for a child. We will continue to strive to increase the number of children placed in kin, which will help with the budget also.
I'm glad you brought that up, but we still haven't rolled out our own kinship plan and knowing what that dollar amount's going to look like, and we put that in the previous budget, so I don't know.
Well, the state paid for the first 9 months of this year. The county is now getting ready to start making payments to kinship providers. Going forward, the state will only pay for the first 6 months of a child's care in custody. So the county will then pick up the cost of the kin placement at that point.
So I know this is off the topic a little bit, but when do you think that plan is you can present in front of the HHS?
I think within the next couple of weeks, we'd be more than able to do that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this time.
Ms. Brown?
Thank you. As you talked about the number decreasing for kids in custody, how much of that would you equate to the pandemic, and do you expect that number to actually go back up as we transition from post-pandemic activity?
Again, the children in child welfare, the number ebbs and flows a bit. And so we could just be in a natural place where it has dropped and it could start to go back. We're not seeing that yet. We watch the numbers every week. Again, we're about 250 beneath where we were last year. If we start to climb, if that starts to happen, we will pay attention. Of that 2,586 kids in care, about 800 of those children are children in which we have terminated parental rights. So these are children we're looking to get adopted. So as the more adoptions we can get through, those kids will come off the rolls also. So the kids come off a couple different ways. So my point is, as we increase our adoption efforts and get more of those 800 children adopted, first of all, it will save the county dollars as far as those placement costs. It will open up other placements. So if we start to see more kids coming in the front door, we might be able to maintain where we're at.
And I guess the initiation process where those kids come into our care, is that prompted? How is that usually prompted?
Children come into care a couple different ways. One of the ways they come into care is called a JR6. So the police respond to a home. It can be a parent saying, I'm not keeping them. I don't want them. I'm not keeping them. The police bringing the child to the agency is the police giving us custody of that child. Now we have to then file for custody in the court within this next business day. It's one way children come into care. Another way a child comes into care is through an investigation that a worker completes. Worker goes out, there are serious safety concerns about the child. The worker will call a team decision-making meeting to talk about, is there a way to make this child safe in their home? If not, the child will come into care that way. I think the third most prevalent way that children come into care is through something called intent to grant. So the juvenile court at times will have situations where children come before them for their own behaviors. In situations where parents do not show up for those court hearings or again refuse their children, the juvenile court will then issue to the county, to the Children's Services, what is called an intent to grant, meaning we're intending to give you custody of this child. In those situations, the agency has the ability to go out and do a home study, try to figure out if there is another way other than the child entering custody. I would say those are the three most prevalent ways children come into custody.
And so it sounds like, was that the JR6 is prompted by kind of some activity where the police get involved?
Typically, yes. A JR6 is the police handing us custody of a child, correct?
And then in the investigation process, I'm assuming the parents aren't calling investigations on themselves. I'm guessing that's a neighbor or a teacher, perhaps?
It could be, but frankly, there are times when the parent calls the police because there's a parent-teen conflict in the home and the parent can't manage it, and they will call for police assistance.
Is that a JR6 or
That is.
investigation?
So in those
I'm
situations.
clear on the JR6, the investigation, though. So how are those prompted? Is that, that's what I'm saying. I don't think a parent will call on themselves. So is that a teacher or a neighbor, or how are those generally prompted?
They can come from a multitude of places, absolutely. It could be anonymous, it could be the next door neighbor. Children sometimes call themselves
Okay. And
on their parents.
are we following those trends? Do we keep a record so that we can kind of identify? Because it seems like you've stated that there's some ebbs and flows, and because students were in being homeschooled for a significant period of time, I would imagine that might have had an impact on the number of students that we got in custody. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, I see. We do track referral sources, if that's what you're asking me. So we could certainly provide those.
That
We
would be
know
helpful.
how many come from a hospital setting, how many come from different sources. Yes, we
Right.
can track that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Would you
Chair.
like it just for this year or for more than this year?
For
The trends, the referral sources?
19, 20, and this year?
Okay.
Okay, so next is Councilwoman Simon.
Thank you. I just want to follow up about the optimal level of social workers at your agency. I think you said the last number was 521.
520.
520. And that's a number that you believe would be sufficient to protect the children and families in the county and to address the actual number of calls and children coming into your care.
I think if we could become staffed at that number, caseloads would be low enough that we could do our best to protect the children of the community. I can't guarantee,
Of course.
but yes, I do
That's an
think it would be an
optimal
optimal number.
number.
Yes, ma'am.
So given that consideration, are you doing everything in your power to make sure that that number is met?
Yes, we have hired 84 staff this year. We will continue to hire. But again, I think the issue for us is also about retention, and we have to figure out a way. We are tracking who leaves the agency, how many years of service they have had. We have started exit surveys, but honestly, most staff do not complete the exit surveys. So at times, we are doing our best thinking as to why staff are leaving their job, but we may not know because the exit surveys are not being completed by staff.
So in a perfect world, you're going to hopefully fill and retain more than you're doing today. I mean, post-COVID, right?
Yes.
So why isn't this in your budget? I frankly am confused by this.
So as we've heard, the positions were removed because they were vacant.
Okay, but you were trying to fill them actively.
And,
So-
and have been given permission to fill them.
Okay, so assuming the stars align, these positions will be filled at least beyond the 400 some number that you have today and budgeted.
Well, I can take my vacancies all the way back to 2018, long before COVID, and we run a fair amount of vacancies at any given time. In 2018, I had 70 vacancies. So this retention thing is a cycle for us. Yes, I would like to get to 520. Am I confident I can get there? I am not.
What are you confident, what's a confident number?
I'd like to maintain what I have and stop having such turnover.
That's your confident number?
It is my
You're up-
confident number.
that's your
My current number is my confident number. If I could keep steady, the 450 I have, and have them, their longevity on the job, and the cases stay with the same staff, that's my confidence number. Absolutely.
So this tuition reimbursement should be an incentive to both attract and retain.
Yes, I think if with the education comes a commitment to stay on the job a period of time, yes.
So would your confident number go up if that program goes into place?
We've maintained the 450 by hiring 84 people this year. I'd like to maintain the 450 without having to hire 84 people. I think 450 would remain my number I'm shooting for, and I would love to exceed that.
Okay. I mean, this just goes in line with what we're talking about. I mean, just at the practicality, if you start hiring more and then you're a confident number, then it's just going to be a pragmatic issue to keep coming back here after hiring and going through that process. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. We want to budget for a greater number, I think, because this is just too vital. And we've been talking about this for a long time, but this just seems to it's counterintuitive to me.
Ms. Baker and Gallagher.
I would agree with that. That's exactly what I was driving at with our director, is that if I wrote the numbers right, you're budgeted for 453, and you have currently today in 2021, 453.
Correct.
So it would seem to me that if you're budgeting for a new budget and your aspiration is 520, although never met, still, if you could add another 25 people tomorrow, given the incentive perhaps with this college tuition, and perhaps conversations about what else do you need to encourage more of these social workers. I mean, to me, that is probably the most important piece that we can do for you, is to give you a good qualified workforce. And if you're lacking that because this is just an entry position and they look at this as a springboard, is there anything we can do to help you not make this a springboard and make this a job that people want to stay at? I get the burnout, I get the, there's other jobs that perhaps pay better, but what else can we do other than just keep rotating these jobs and not aspiring more than 453 when you would really like to have more? And I would think that more qualified people would make for more qualified services out there and ease some of the sharing of resources that we talked about earlier in order to get the job done. Is there any, I would think if I were you, I would be concerned about not being able to go over that amount unless, which is not budgeted, unless I go out and ask for it. And I know that everyone seems confident if they ask, they get. But when it's not budgeted, to me, it's in time could lose its effectiveness. No concern about that?
I mean, it's not that I'm not concerned. My concern lies with retention, absolutely with retention. The amount of money and time and effort we are putting into training new people could be used in a much different way. So ideally, if I could maintain 453 staff and keep that same staff for a year and build on their ability to do the job and be more equipped to do the job, I would feel very successful. So this constant hiring of staff isn't getting me anywhere. And so I would rather turn our efforts to retention of the staff we do have. What I will say to you, I was a frontline worker. I don't know how to explain this to people who weren't. You can either do the job or you can't. It is incredibly difficult to go into strangers' houses, into difficult, dangerous neighborhoods. It is incredibly difficult, even when you know it is the right thing to do, to take somebody's child. It goes home with you. And I think in a time where I would suggest maybe every single one of us is suffering from mild depression, it's just adding to the struggle my staff are having in doing their job. For me, it's retention. It's all about retention. Retaining quality employees, improving the quality of the work they can do would be a success to me.
So if I may, if that is, I hear you. If retention is that is your answer, outside of the college tuition to give incentives, what other incentives can we offer you? I would think that if you don't burn out the people that you have by expecting them to do more because we only have so many to work with, would be one incentive to have more people than the 450 that are what it is that you have today that you tend to have a turnover. What thoughts have you had in order to retain, given the very difficult circumstances? I mean, we have correction officers that we also had difficulty retaining, and we came up with some solutions. Some of that was higher pay. in order, some of it was benefits, some of it was incentives. What do you have to offer if it's not the number of people, but what it takes to keep those people? Has that been a conversation that you've had with the director, and that
Yes.
perhaps we at county council can assist in if we're talking about more money?
We definitely would, I definitely believe my staff should be paid more money. You don't pay anyone in child welfare the way they should be paid. So yes, my frontline workers should make more money. It should be comparable to what they could make working for a private provider where they don't have to go into homes. I definitely think my staff would like more flexibility in their schedule. Some ability to have a better work-life balance. Many of my frontline workers are young parents. They want to go to the PTA meeting and they want to do their job. So they want greater flexibility in how they're allowed to do their job, where they're allowed to do their job. I think both of those would help with retention.
So if you can show that we can save money or be equal in money by offering more pay and flexibility in hours because you're not dealing with the cost of turnover, why hasn't that been something that, we haven't considered? Why are we still in the same treadmill of retain, hire, when we know that those are the two pieces that you need in order to retain? Why aren't we hearing more about that?
We are putting a proposal together to allow workers more flexibility and more work-life balance. We are working on that. We also just finalized a contract for the workers, so we'd have to do a wage reopener, which I'm not sure that the county wants to do that. I think the number one thing is the flexibility. Their ability to have flexibility would go a long way for the staff to feel valued and they had better work-life balance.
And that would keep your retention.
I think it would help my retention, yes.
I would offer that we think about that seriously. I mean, I think also opening up the wage, if that's what we need to do, as I said, with the correction officers, the problems we saw in jail, that needed to be addressed, and it was. This is the same people on the front lines doing the
Absolutely.
hardest job, as you said. I have no debate with that. My debate is, why are we having such a turnover if there are certain incentives that we can offer, even if it costs us more? At the end, I'm sure you can show us where we actually are saving money, because you don't have the training and the learning of the job, and just always posting and interviewing, and all of that costs money.
Absolutely.
Those are my comments.
So along that line, it takes about a half a year's salary, sometimes up to a full year to replace a position. So there's savings opportunity if we can reduce the turnover. And we have Councilwoman Brown followed by Conwell, and when we finish this department, we're going to take a short break.
I think
Ms. Brown.
Gallagher was next, and then I'll follow. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Your folks and the people in the jail, we've always said, this council has always known that you had the toughest jobs. And we pursued that in the past, and it was shot down. So hopefully it won't get shot down again. What you think will help you. After 11 years, you think people around here would listen to the people that are on the streets or in the houses or in the jail as to what they need. You saw the reopener basically with the COs. I don't anticipate you're going to have a pushback from the council here. And it's not about saving money, it's preventing problems down the line. God only knows how much the law department is going to inform us we're going to be paying out this year. But my concern once again goes to your number's 435, your optimal is 520. I take the word optimal as necessary budgeted number. If you get 520, you'd be clicking your heels, I would assume. Now, is it realistic? It's probably as realistic as the 720 of the COs. It's probably not a realistic number, but it's a budgeted number. So you're at 435. You have 8 classes this year?
We will have 8, yeah, we're under
How
7.
many per class?
As David mentioned earlier in the year, they were very small classes. The class that we're working on now has 15 in it. But early in the year, we had a class as small as 4 people. So you can imagine the amount of resources being used to train 4 people.
It's, again, the dog chasing its tail. So, but we work in the world of budgets. And a budget, if you're at 435, I honestly don't know how you can go out and recruit for positions more than 435.
Because at the rate we're losing people, we're trying to do anticipatory hiring.
Okay, so you get lucky on 15 on
And if they all make it out of training
If they
and
all
make it
make
off
it,
probation,
and
which
you're
is
at-
not likely.
but you're at 435, say you lose 5, but you pick up 10. So now you're 5 over your budgeted number. Are you budgeting properly, or are you budgeting to a number? I sense that all we're hearing is we're budgeting to a number that we have. And wink, wink, if you need any more, you get lucky, we're going to get you those positions. Ergo, it's not a budget. Your budget's blown.
I understand your position. I just want to remind you, I've hired 84 people and lost 69.
Right.
I don't know that I can even get to the number I'm trying to get to that I'm budgeted for.
It's the same thing with the jail. They'll bring in 20 and they'll lose 25. And it's frustrating, I know, and we're hoping that the move that was made, that was trumpeted by the administration, which we give them great credit for, that finally, we got someone to listen to us, let's raise the rate. We're hoping that's going to help out. But again, my concern is when you go into a budget process, and I've done now 21 years with legislative budgets. If you budget to this number, you add 436, you have blown your budget. We're saying budget to the 520, which is optimal. Your words, optimal, which is probably what you need. I mean, let's be fair. You probably need that 520. You would love to have that 520, knock down the amount of cases that everybody's working on. It reduces the amount of burnout that you're running into. I can't even imagine how these people go home at night sometimes and not be able to get what they've seen during the day out of their heads. And I haven't been there, but I can only imagine it. Try to imagine it. I can't imagine it. So what I'm saying again is 520 should have been your number, not 435. I think you're all being told to drop the 520, stay on the 535. I don't care what anybody says. That's my conspiracy theory. I think you need the 520. You wouldn't have said it was optimal if you didn't need it. And the 435 is getting you by. And we're not in the business here of getting you by. Because when you do getting you by, you know it, I know it, everybody else knows it, people die. Or bad things happen. So we're trying to avoid that. Thank you.
Ms. Brown, followed by Conwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you answered one of my questions of the 8469 left?
Yes.
Okay, and was that out of the new hires or?
So I can tell you, I have it broken down if you would like.
Yeah.
Sure. So people who left in 2021, less than 6 months on the job, 20. 6 to 12 months on the job, 7. 1 to 2 years on the job, 14. And then more than 2 years, 28.
28?
That equals 69. I added it up just to be sure.
So so those that have been around actually are leaving in greater numbers than some of the even new hires, which.
Well, I would tell you, in my opinion, you have to do the job 2+ years before you're considered fully competent. I mean, we all know this, families are unique and they have unique needs. So if I go out and serve 3 or 4 families, I certainly haven't figured out how to do this job. You need to be on the job a couple years before you're really competent at understanding the complexity of family, the complexity of trauma, the removal of children, the reunification. There's so much complexity to the work. I think that some of the people leaving with more than 2 years are probably we're in a workforce where you can pick your job. So the private provider agencies pay more than my agency pays. So these are jobs they can go into where they serve as an adjunct worker, takes them out of the community, takes them out of the removal or the reunification. They work more as an assistant, excuse me, to the family trying to get their kids back. I would argue it's a hard job, but it's not as hard as the job they had. So people are looking at their options. They're looking at options to move into a less stressful situation.
Understood. I certainly appreciate the work and know, I believe that anyone entering this type of work doesn't come in with the illusion that it'll be easy or pretty. And so.
But I think until you do it, as much, we do a realistic job preview. We have you shadow, but until you're the person standing in front of somebody's door and they're calling you every name but the name you were given and telling you they will F you up unless you get off their porch, you don't know if you can do it until you're standing there then. And I speak from experience. That's the moment you know, can I do this?
Understood. And for me, the thing that you touched on where I think we agree is about the flexibility and the balance. And so some of those things you think even in those high stress situations could improve retention?
I do. I know how often my workers will be going through their day, and tonight they're going to go watch their kid play soccer, and then at 3 o'clock they get an emergency and they're at work till midnight. And so feeling inadequate as a parent or feeling inadequate on the job is something they're constantly struggling with. So I do think having better flexibility and a better work-life balance would help, because many of my staff want to do the job. They also want to be there for their families. They want to do both. And I think there's a way to do that.
And who has the authority to determine that flexibility?
The recommendation I would make to Mr. Merriman, and then I presume that he or upper administration would make that decision. It is not totally my decision.
Okay. And you've been in this role for?
5 years.
Okay. And this has been an effort or initiation that you've presented?
It's been much more of an effort since the pandemic. Because, you know, in March of last year, we sent our workers home. And so you really start to think about how you can do a job differently when you're forced to do a job differently. You know what I mean? We all were forced to make changes because of what the pandemic brought. And so I think we've learned some things from the pandemic. And I think what we have learned could aid with flexibility for staff.
You indicated to Ms. Baker that you're working on a plan. When will we have that?
Within the month.
Within the month?
Well,
Okay.
within a month, 30 days. I don't mean by the end of October, but yes.
Okay, and just to circle back to my colleague, Councilwoman Conwell, as well as Baker and yourself, that legislation about the college tuition reimbursement will be coming soon. And one of the initiatives that I believe came out of the declaring of racism as a public health crisis, the case recommendation was to also initiate a college tuition reimbursement plan, which speaks to the fact of my colleague Sonny Simon. If we're making retention efforts and we're successful in that, and if you are indeed the ultimate initiator of how we can implement flexible schedules and work-life balance, then that seems to me that it would promote an environment for greater retention. So I guess we can't overstate the fact that budget for a higher number so that we can make sure we're serving the community's needs.
Ms. Conwell.
Thank you to the chair, to the director, and many of my questions have been answered, but just, I guess, one final comment or clarification. Professional services director were in the budget, in the last budget cycle, and it always seems, when I say professional services, I'm talking about the training that we're talking about. They always get decreased or taken away, because I know in the past we've had conversations, and I think if you look at your numbers, retention is usually not a major problem when we offer those additional incentives.
You mean educations? I think it would help with retention, absolutely.
Right, but I mean, in the past, in the previous budgets, I've always seen this get, either brought up, put in, and then removed. It's never utilized. Can you remember a time that we did utilize it?
I can remember back in 2000, I don't know if that makes me old or what that makes me, but in 2000, there was reimbursement available. I don't remember since then if it has been in a budget that was approved. I don't know that.
Walter, are you here? Has it, because I thought in 2019, I know we've had discussions on it.
We have.
It's been before us, and I don't know why it never gets there if retention is hard. So, do you remember a time, Director P, when the professional services or education when was the last time it was utilized in a budget for DCFS?
All right, Councilwoman Conwell, you're talking about tuition reimbursement, or is it just
Right.
training overall?
Training, tuition,
Tuition reimbursement, the last time that I'm familiar with, that we had it was back in HHS under the Board of County Commissioners, and we did have a tuition reimbursement program. And it was reimbursable with state and federal grants, as well as partially by the Health and Human Services levy.
and that's what the administration is asking for now, correct?
I believe what the administration's asking for now is a tuition reimbursement program that's going to be available to all county employees, regardless whether you're on the executive side or on the Health and Human Services.
And so that was going to be my next question. So if we pass that, how much of that dollar amount would actually go to HHS?
It's basically broken in half, so it's 1.2 million for the general fund agencies and 1.2 million for the Health and Human Services agencies.
So you're asking 2.4?
2.4 in the aggregate, yes,
Each year?
each year.
Okay. I thought you asked that question earlier. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Jones, President.
Thank you. So Cindy, you mentioned you'll present a plan to Dave Merriman in the coming weeks to improve retention and flexibility. You mentioned education being one of the elements necessary you believe, to help improve retention. Are there any other elements that you think are needed, and specifically to the flexibility? I know you're still working on the plan, but what are the elements that you think are necessary to help improve both flexibility as well?
Well, again, I think the flexibility piece speaks to how somebody structures their day and how they're able to move through their day, managing their personal life and their professional life.
What would be a part of your recommendation to see that your staff has that flexibility? I can envision education being a part of the retention element, but for the flexibility, what is going to encourage, what is going to assist them in having the opportunity to be flexible, have a better balance between work and...
I think for some staff, it would be the ability on occasion to work outside the building. So I got a sick kid at home. Instead of calling in sick, I'm allowed to work at home. I can get my job done and I can take care of my child. I think it's things like that.
Thank you.
Ms. Baker.
Not all cases, though, can someone who needs flexibility in their job do their job, just do it in a different location. So that would tend to think that you would need more employees so that you can juggle those hours now. No longer is that person working from 9 to 5 or on call if it's a 24-hour job. So how many more, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, maybe it's the 520, but how many more employees would you need if you were given approval to now consider flexible hours where someone wants to go to that soccer game? Someone has to go and replace that person and do the job that they were going to do if that soccer game didn't exist.
So we already have that resource, ma'am. We have coverage schedules. So if you're off doing whatever you're doing and I'm in your unit and I'm on coverage, then I'll be the person handling that.
And is that widely, though, accepted? I mean, do we encourage it? And does that person get paid even though they're not there? I mean,
If they're working, they're being paid. If they're off the clock, they're not being paid. We also have a 24/7 hotline, so the agency never closes. We move things around just as quick as we have to. And if today this was what I was going to do and a priority comes in, my priority changes. And the job of the managers is to manage that constantly changing priority. The priority can change 3 times in a day. And so that's part of our ability to be flexible and to move toward what we need to move toward.
But
So
we're
we
talking
manage
now about more flexibility, right? We're now talking about encouraging those as an incentive to stay, this flexibility piece that doesn't exist today.
During the
exists on a-
pandemic, we saw our sick time go down because people felt like they had more control over their schedule. I would suggest we would not only retain people, we'd have more people coming in and doing their job because of the flexibility they're being given. I'm not suggesting it's easy. I'm suggesting it's management's job to figure out how to make this doable for the staff.
Are you saying then you can attempt more flexibility to give that incentive to retain, and you don't need to hire more people to cover those times that you're putting this more of a incentive or an increase of time changes? You don't need to have people that you may have to hire that kind of just ebb and flows better than it does now?
I think it will ebb and flow better. They'll still be doing a full work week. They'll just be doing it in a different way. The reality is, when I was a worker, nearly no family worked. Now all my families work. So my staff have to work after 5 most of the time anyway to visit their families. Wouldn't it be great if they could work the morning at home and go out in the afternoon and manage both?
Yeah.
So it's really just a workforce that's evolving, and the county and the agency need to evolve with the workforce. It's what they're asking for in order to feel productive and valued. And I
Okay.
think it's what we need to do.
Good, so I'm hearing from you then, you can manage this new program you would like to see in flexible hours without increasing the number of people in order to achieve that goal.
That's my belief, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to take a short break, and that we're going to come back at 1:15 the hour. Thank you.
Can I
Yes.
object to that? Make a move to get 3 more minutes.